I can no longer recall the faces of my parents or the sound of their voices. Whenever I think of them, I visualize photographs and this film clip taken before I left for the UK in 1960, when the whole family came to say goodbye to me. Mum laying the table and my father expending a great deal of energy because the camera was looking at him. "261 High Street, Wodonga was our very first real home since leaving bombed-out Europe. My parents had rented a house, a rickety structure which we shared with cockroaches and termites, and the occasional goanna in the backyard dunny, which scared the living daylights out of my sister Birgitta. My father carted gravel in a beaten-up third-hand truck, and my mother worked in a factory making radios, I think. At home, money was always tight. Whenever my parents argued, which was often, it was always about money. I was 15 and Birgitta was 9. School was at the end of High Street, Wodonga. My favourite subject at that time was art. I thought I was good at it. And one day I learned that in Melbourne at 50 Hotham Street, which was an art college, they were offering scholarships to the deserving. And of course I was a deserving case. I was good at art. I sent away for their test. When it came, I had to draw a cockerel and a face. I sent it off to them, awaiting their judgment. When it came, it devastated me. I was not a deserving case. They couldn't offer me a scholarship, but they could offer me a discount, which I took to my father. And of course he said no. In 1955, sunshine was at the end of the known universe, with the charm of a smelly armpit, due to the foul discharge from tanneries and plasterworks. Now this is where my father bought a weatherboard house. The area around us was barren and rocky. No plant dared to poke its head above the ground. My father was paying off and carting gravel in yet another third-hand truck which kept breaking down, so he'd come home late at night in a foul temper because yet another leaf spring had broken and it needed to be mended right then and there. So I'd be out there in the pouring rain holding a working light, watching him under the truck, grunting and groaning with oil dripping into his face. And I came to hate the smell of oil and petrol and associated all that with my father. By now, I was working at the Electrical Standards Laboratory, which gave me a certain amount of freedom. I could pay Mum a bit of rent. And on a Saturday morning, I could indulge. I could go on the red Rackler to the city, where I'd have a spaghetti bolognese and a Sobrani cigarette. In fact, I could have a Sobrani cigarette on the train, which was okay in those days. It made me feel so sophisticated. Now, it was on one of those Saturday morning outings that I came across George Adamski's book, Flying Saucers Have Landed. I was awestruck. Absolutely. There was a world out there I knew nothing about, and I so longed to be part of that world. In 1955, national service was compulsory. I was plucked out of the familiar and thrown into Pacapagno. The country needed to stock up on cannon fodder for the next war. I was 18 and terrified that my life would end even before it had begun. I wanted to experience a flying saucer. I wanted to be kissed by somebody as I did in the movies. The balm for my troubled soul came one film night in Dhaka when the Moody Film Institute, which was a kind of semi-religious body, screened a film designed to inspire converts. We watched clouds scurrying across the sky at double speed and the life cycle of a plant from birth to absolute decay condensed in a few seconds. I saw time-lapse for the very first time and I was giddy with excitement. This was my flying saucer. It identified my calling. I would become the maker of films. I had seen a parabolic 16mm camera in a second-hand shop. It took all my savings. I even managed to talk my father into allowing me to use half his work shed. "How long will you be there?" he asked. "A few weeks," I said. Little did either of us know that I'd be there for 2 years. The script for Angel with the Scar started as a mega Cecil B. DeMille production and ended up as a solo piece. Out of necessity, I became the main actor, director, builder of sets, and even cameraman when my friend Wally was unavailable. I was scared, but also bubbling with confidence and excitement. If Orson Welles could have done it with Citizen Kane, why not I? How's that for arrogance? Looking back at the 2-year-long effort, a silent film with over-dramatic music and me in frame more aware of what the camera was supposed to be doing, I am still left with admiration. I had no lights, so I made my own. I had no editing equipment, so choosing where to cut was done by holding the film up to the light and snipping it. And when Wally was unavailable to be behind the camera, I used my mum's kitchen mop to line up the shot and then took its place. Perhaps I should have let the kitchen mop do the acting. What puzzles me at age 83 is why I chose disfigurement and a character I knew nothing about. Was I trying to shock, making an impression, say to the world, "Look, here I am"? If I could now talk to me back then, I'd tell him to forget the scar, forget the lights, forget the set. Just tell the story, what it's like to be age 20. Youth really is blind to the undeserved generosity of nature, little realizing that everything is merely on loan for a very short time. In a roundabout way, Angel with the Scar got me to England, and in 1963 the BBC was recruiting. I told them I'd made a film which had been picked up by contemporary films. They were impressed and they wanted to see it. Somehow they never did, which perhaps is just as well. But that didn't prevent me from becoming a freelance director on major shows for the next 30 years. My father never saw rushes or the final film. He was never available, or I was not available, or didn't have the film projector when he was free. My mother saw the film, and when the lights came on, her face was streaked with tears, which puzzled me at the time. I think she saw that her child had grown wings and would soon fly away, which of course I did. By the time I returned to Australia 28 years later, both my parents had died. Standing by their graveside in Faulkner Cemetery felt strangely familiar. I had directed this very scene in a movie, but this time it was me, not an actor, standing by the graveside of my parents. Were my feelings of guilt genuine? Should I have returned sooner to help my ailing mother? Should I have given up my career and perhaps even my partner in London? I chose what I thought was right at the time. Right or wrong, I chose what I thought was right. No regrets. Well, perhaps one. Failing to have told my father that I had judged him far too severely.